Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
John, I have to be honest with you. I am so out of touch with baseball, and I'm so out of touch with the Cardinals. And I told you I've started taking a disinterest to baseball in general, the Cardinals in specifics. But I was somewhat shocked to see a story the other day about Mike Schildt. You know who Mike Schildt is?
Yeah, he's having a great season.
Yes.
He's having a great season with the Pods.
Yes.
He had that philosophical difference. Remember, he got dismissed because of a philosophical difference.
Right. He took the team to the playoffs. Wasn't that the deal? He took the team to the playoffs, and then they fired him, okay? And nothing against Ollie, okay? I know there are people out there that love Ollie, and there are people out there that I think the number of people that like Ollie are growing fewer and fewer by the day. But I had no idea that Schildt ended up, because for a while, I think he ended up in the commissioner's office. Wasn't that the deal? He had like a job with the Major League Baseball commissioner?
I'm not sure, but I think by the next full season, I think he had already landed somewhere. Because, I mean, I think the Padres saw that he was a good manager.
So is this his second season with the Padres?
It's either his second or his third. I'm not sure. So, and they had, up until recently, I don't know, maybe it's still going on, they had the longest win streak. They were the hottest team in baseball for at least 2 weeks. I think they had won some ridiculous number of games in a row.
So maybe it's the underdog in me. I love stories like this. I love stories about a guy or gal who gets canned at a plant because, or a job or something like that. Well, they just couldn't quite measure up to our high expectations. And they go down the street and they kick butt. You know what I'm saying? Now, you can look at that a couple different ways. Maybe it's just the environment they were in, that they, whatever the management had set them up for failure because of the management says, you can't do this, you have to do that, and you have to do exactly what we tell you to do. Well, I'm the manager. We don't care. We're just telling you what to do. You're just a figurehead. Or the flip side of that is you get canned, and maybe you go home and you go like, okay, maybe I did screw up. Maybe I, reevaluate your situation and say, I'm going to reinvent myself and move on down the road. And what I am fascinated by, I talk about this all the time, I read business biographies. I love reading business biographies of these people that you see as these hugely successful people who, when you read, you research their background, they were like in terrible straits. They did stupid stuff. I mean, like, for example, every time I talk about this, I get in trouble for this. I have people who unfriended me on Facebook. True story. I had people who unfriended me and sent me nasty emails, nasty Facebook messengers, and nasty texts when I put the picture of me and Mike Lindell up on my Facebook page. Okay? I told the story. Mike Lindell flew into St. Louis specifically to help the Salvation Army kick off their new resale center out there in, I don't know if that's unincorporated St. Charles County. It's right there at Harvester and 364. I think that might be unincorporated. It's either St. Peter's or I don't think it's, I don't know. It's probably
St. Charles. Go ahead. We've heard it, but go ahead.
Okay. He flew into town to kick that off. He gave them, I think, about $30,000 worth of his merchandise, pillows and all that kind of stuff. He didn't, say proceeds benefit the Salvation Army. 100%. And he was selling everything for half price. And people were just coming in there buying it like crazy. And because in like, if it was a $30 pillow and you paid $15, $15 of that went to the Salvation Army. He took nothing. And at the time I was working with Salvation Army, and I'm not trying to sound like, I'm a big important person, I'd done all this charity work, but I was some chairman of the Salvation Army Tree of Lights campaign. That's what I was. The Tree of Lights campaign for St. Charles County. Did it for several years. Raised a lot of money and enjoyed it. And finally got to the point where I go like, you know what, it's time for somebody else.
I gotcha.
But essentially, I was my official duty to go out there and talk to him. And I got a picture of me and him, and I got people that hate me now because of the fact. Somebody just last week said to me, I remember that seeing your picture on your Facebook page with you and Mike Schildt. It really made me, or not Mike Schildt, Mike Lindell, really made me mad. I go, why? Well, he's a terrible person. Well, let me tell you the story of Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell was a druggie. Mike Lindell was a scum of the earth, drugged out person, did terrible stuff. And one day Mike Lindell woke up and said, I'm going to turn my life around, and I'm going to make a difference in the world. I'm going to run a company. I'm going to start a company. At the point, he didn't really know what he was going to do. I'm going to hire people. I'm going to put people to work. I'm going to put money in the economy, and then I am going to campaign on the fact that if I, a down at my luck drug user, habitual, what do you call it, crack cocaine user, whatever he was using, I can turn my life around. Okay, to me, that's the guy that I want to see that guy talk. I want to see that guy motivate people. I want to see that guy go into schools and say, but of course, if you said, oh, today our guest speaker at Francis Howell Central High School is Mike Lindell, there would be people who would form a human chain across Highway N so you couldn't get into the high school. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you mean. For folks who want to hear the full story, I just looked it up, Brad. We dedicated two segments to Mike Lindell. One on June 24th, you told the story, and one's on March 13th. So if you want to hear Brad's full story on Mike Lindell, check out June 24th and March 13th. Well, but yes, Brad, you're right. I mean, people have gone nuts on you for merely posting a picture of this man. By the way, Mike Schildt, you were right, Brad. This is his first season. I thought it was his second or third, but he had been the third base coach previous to that.
Really?
Yeah. So then he got promoted through the system.
Well, the other interesting thing about him was he was a lifelong bachelor. And after the season ended, he got married, and then he gets fired. Okay, now think about that for a minute. You're the girlfriend, fiance of this guy, and he's the manager of the Cardinals. You think, oh my God, I'm in love with this guy. He's the manager of the Cardinals. Oh, and he wants to marry me. Oh, we're gonna get married. Oh, and then he gets fired. Okay. If you're a woman, are you going like, maybe I made the wrong choice, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that I don't know. That does make for a funny story.
How many times have you heard of and it works both ways, but I think it's more, maybe I'm being sexist by saying this. I think most times it's the woman who marries a guy who's doing well, and then the guy all of a sudden is not doing so well, and the woman decides to see you later, alligator. It happens the other way around, and to the point where you're going like, okay, was that really true love, or was just the fact that it's like when you see the billionaire dudes that are like 85 years old and they're on life support, and and they have the oxygen mask on,
Smith.
right, and they have a 25-year-old on their arm, and they're married, and she just won the Miss Bikini. Maui bikini contest, and it's kind of like, oh no, hold on a minute now. What's she doing with this dude who's old and shriveled like me, 85 years old? I'm actually 89. I'm not as shriveled as most of the people my age, but
I don't need to hear about your shriveledness, Brad. As the great author Richard Cooper, one of my favorite authors, says, women don't want to run the race. They want to stand at the finish line, and he uses a naughty word, the winners. So some women want to pick the winners. And especially in their defense, Brad, I think once you get to a certain age, if you're a woman, especially if you're post-wall, if you've already hit the wall and you're in your epiphany phase and you're like, holy cow, my eggs are drying up, you don't want to, quote, invest a lot of time with a guy that's got, quote, potential. Like, why waste your time with a man that has potential who's probably not going to amount to much when you can go for a proven commodity?
Was it Don Lemon? Yes, it was Don Lemon who made the comment about Nikki Haley. Remember that?
I do. Yeah.
He said.
Yeah, he talked about how she was past her prime.
Right. I'm going like, and Don wonders why he doesn't have a job anymore. Then he does that bizarre interview with where he had a gig with good old Mr. Tesla with Elon Musk, and Elon Musk was going to put him on as a featured platform provider or whatever on X, and they have that bizarre interview where Don is saying bizarre, weird stuff, and there's these, if you've watched parts of the interview, there's this several uncomfortable silence of the interview where Don says something to Ilan, and Ilan just sits there and just sort of looks at him like, I don't believe you just asked me that. And it's not like he asked him, where, like something personal, like, why is it that you have 14 kids or something like that? I mean, it was just weird questions. And the whole Don Lemon thing. So do you remember, me being a Ferguson veteran, he was one of the guys that was camped out. They called it. Matter of fact, at the OJ trial, they called it OJ City, and I can't remember what they called it. At the old Northland shopping center, all the satellite.
It was Stolen Cigarilloville. Wasting away again in Stolen Cigarilloville.
Don Lemon did his show from the old Northland Shopping Center parking lot on a nightly basis during the Michael Brown Ferguson thing 10 years ago. And, I have friends of mine that, once again, you're talking to me. There aren't too many people that make this claim. I can make the claim. I was once upon a time a crew member on the Publishers Clearinghouse Prize Patrol, where literally I was one of the crew members. I was an audio guy on that crew that gave away money. We did it live on NBC during the 5:30 NBC nightly newscast, blah, 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 blah. I can tell you all the crazy behind-the-scenes stuff that you just don't realize what goes on with these events. You think, oh, look what they're doing. They showed up at this lady's front door. Oh, they're giving her a big check. Oh, isn't she low? You would not believe what goes on behind the scenes. I have friends of mine that were crewing up there that talked about that Don Lemon was, what's a word for very hard to deal with? What would be a nice word of saying?
Like a diva? He's a diva?
Well, it was, you're the wordsmith. I'm not.
Was he being obstinate? Was he being petulant?
Well, he was being petulant, diva-ish. A diva, I think, more isn't a diva sort of like portraying a woman if you say someone's a diva?
Yeah, so Don Lemon, yeah.
Okay, maybe you're right. Okay. It's, once again, John can tell stories about the corporate guy who stands up there and, gives this very eloquent speech, and when he's in the car going back to the headquarters is F-bombing everybody in sight. Right? Am I right?
Now listen, Brett, you don't need to bring Ron Jacober into this. Because I'm not the one that worked with him. That was somebody else who happens to be a co-host of this morning show.
I didn't work with him.
Who happens to be the HMIC of these stations. Allegedly.
I didn't work with him. He was. I always thought, going back to my youth, I always loved Ron Jacober. I thought he had a great persona. He came across the air as being, hi, I'm Ron, I'm your buddy. Yeah, I'm going to sit here and tell you the sports. And then, unfortunately, I had to work with him professionally, where he ripped me a new anal orifice. And I'd never met the guy in person.
What? Now, what was that? What? I don't think you ever told us what you allegedly did wrong. Right?
Okay, with my traffic network, we had a data feed, okay, and we supplied data to the stations. We supplied real-time reporters like Captain Mac worked for me and Sue Thomas worked for me, but we had stations that didn't want to take our quote-unquote talent. They wanted to have their own people read the traffic. So we had a data feed, okay? So now keep in mind, this is traffic information. What happens at 6:55, right now, is not going to be the same thing that's happening at 7 o'clock. If there's a 3-car accident on I-70 blocking the center lane at 6:55, chances are those 3 people who sat out there and yelled at each other for 2 minutes have pulled it over to the shoulder, and all lanes are back open again. And traffic, although it's backed up, is going to clear out. So in other words, time is of the essence, okay? So occasionally we have typos on our data network, okay? I walked into a studio to meet him. Matter of fact, they told him I was going to come down. And this is when he worked at KXOK. This was when they were Talk, and they if you remember the whole crazy story, they got the Blues away from KMOX, and Ron Jacober quit. I think he was at KMOX, and he went over to KXOK.
Okay.
My old boss Ron Grubbs was the general manager, and I was ushered into his studio to meet Ron Jacober. He picks up a piece of the copy that we had sent that he printed out on the printer that we provided, and he had it marked up with typos, and he yelled at me. I'm going like, dude, I'm sorry, but you know what? We're getting the stuff out as quickly as we can. We think that speed is more important than typos. And if you're any kind of a good broadcaster, you put something in front of somebody, and most people who are good broadcasters can read around the typos and can essentially read ahead. Their mind reads ahead, and to the point where they can pick up grammatical errors and things like that and fix it on the fly. Am I kidding, John?
You're absolutely right about that. You make a good point, Brad.
Matter of fact, there is I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but there was a thing in the voiceover, actually in the on-camera stuff. If you were doing, I don't know if you ever did this before in your kind of stuff, you were working with comms, where you would hire an actor, and they said they were good in ear. I think that was a term. You know what that meant?
That if you talk to them, they can move on the fly?
Well, yeah. In other words, you could say to them, you'd put them in front of a green screen or something like that, and the people would actually say, okay, now turn to your left and say, this is a great product that Monsanto makes. And
yeah, I get what you're saying. Sure.
As the director is saying this, the actress is executing that move. He's turning to his left. He or she's turning his left and saying, this is a great product that Monsanto makes. Okay? So in other words, and if you know what goes on, if you've ever seen TV shows about, there's what is that, the thing that Jeff Daniels is, did you ever see that miniseries called Newsroom, I think it was called.
No, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Where he's being talked to in his ear, they call it IFB, where the director is talking to him in his ear while he's reading the teleprompter. And think about that for a minute. How many people can read something out loud and have somebody get up next to your ear and say, hey, how about if we got for a hamburger tonight and I'll split the French fries with you, while you're reading something, out of a book? Most people can't do that, but yet this was a thing. This was a thing that they did, and the idea being is you could hire an actor, an actress, and you didn't have to necessarily heavily script it. They didn't have to, you could do it on the fly. And now everybody's just doing AI. There's all these companies now that are doing, like, you want to do your instructional videos, use our AI platform, and you say you want to have a black lady, present it, click, hit this button, and now the black lady reads your script. You want to have a young Italian woman, boom, clip this, and the young Italian woman reads your script, right?
And so my limited experience with that, Brad, is on election night when I did the show with Scott Vaughn. We had 3 hours, so we had in our ear, we were getting from the back room from Kelton Turner and the folks that were working on numbers. He'd say, okay, we'll probably be ready to call this in 60 seconds. Give us 60 seconds and we'll have the graphic up. So then Scott and I, while we're talking, we both hear that we need to talk about another topic for 60 seconds and then kick to the graphic where we announce,
you had
Kehoe has won or whatever.
You had your earpiece in and your IFB, and essentially while you were talking, they were giving you directions.
Correct, yep.
And a couple times I watched it. John said, hold on a minute. They're giving me directions in my earpiece. I can't talk in the air right now. I'm kidding.
And well, I didn't say that because I had my mouth full of red hot riplets. And I was trying to cool my palate.
That Scott had given you previous to the show starting, right?
I did. I saved that bag, actually, and I think I'm going to put it up in my office.
Did Scott sign it?
I did not have him sign it, but maybe we'll trade signatures. I'll sign the new edition of my book, and Scott can sign the Red Hot Riplets.
You need to give him a Sharpie and have him sign Scott Vaughn. Okay, John, say goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?